the Wi-Fi is
That's just because it's really yeah, it's gotta face it away.
We could just move that.
I don't like that.
Can you guys pass that down? Thank you. Whoops. Oh.
Whose is this?
You gotta face it away from it. Yeah. Oh Lord.
And if you're, can you see it? Is it on?
Yes. Yeah, you're in. It's crazy.
In action. All right, we're gonna pull it back a little bit more.
You should turn the volume up on the laptop so we don't have the echo.
Turn it up.
No.
You know the Wi-Fi.
I like to know my Wi-Fi and I can like go on your phone.
Now, can you still hear us though?
Yeah.
Doesn't work really.
Yeah.
When we do that, can you still hear us?
The public.
No, it's good. Like that.
Our Wi-Fi's like good.
Do we still have volume here?
Yeah.
I'm not convinced yet.
Oh. See?
And there's also a delay, huh?
I mean, there's gonna be like.
There's gonna be a delay.
Well, no, my point is if there's a delay, it might not have yet reached the point where I actually turned off the volume, right?
Okay, we can just leave it going until. But this is like. I don't hear it.
Yeah, I don't hear it. That's what I'm saying. Can you see me in the front of the screen yet?
No, I can't see you in front of the screen.
Thank you.
Looks like there's like a 10-second delay.
Tell me when I'm
Whoa.
there.
Yeah, there.
We can hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. But it's the volume is low.
It's kind of low.
Right? That's so
I mean,
maybe
let's
we
see
need
how
to
low my.
Oh. Trippy.
No, it needs to be a little bit louder. Can we turn it up on there?
On this?
Yeah, but on not on that part, but on that part, on the actual encoder.
Oh, I see.
That volume is not click on the actual icon.
That's how you're pretty loud, actually. Like if I have my headphones in, I'd be chilling.
Okay. Let me just close that. And now the last question. I want to plug. Is there any way for the computer? Yeah, I don't want it to die. Yeah. So is there like a extension cord of some sort where I can plug this?
There's probably an outlet under this too.
Okay.
Somewhere. There is. They always have the ground. Yeah, there's like typically on that side.
Yeah, but there's no like one here.
Oh, really?
Are you sure?
What?
I'm like pretty sure the 21st. Can you look under?
Yeah, I do, but there's actually no plug in it.
Really?
Yeah. It's just like the
But there's one over there?
No.
Over there.
Way too so there's nothing that's nothing long enough. About there's nothing over here.
There isn't.
Technical setup issues. Once more, so can you copy to
Take a video and upload it.
Why don't you voice down and not necessarily plugged in? Unplug something that's unnecessarily plugged in.
But there's, I don't see a plug. You're not.
Everything's
All right.
necessary.
What we're going to do is when we
There's no,
There's
nothing.
something on the table. I don't know. It's like near the microphone.
where?
It's like.
We look. There isn't though.
Was that like
Kind of low.
Yeah,
All right,
no, it
well,
doesn't have one in it.
we'll have to move until there when it gets to. We might have to when it gets to.
They can't
A
just
certain-
go find
You can turn your brightness
When it
down.
turns red,
Save energy.
Will that affect the
Oh no, that does affect your screen.
Okay, can we do that?
So. Yeah.
All right,
That
so
will
we'll
save some
try.
battery time.
We'll try. All right, thank you guys. I think we're all set. Thank you so much. What are your names again?
Really always.
Because you're not getting how much charge do you think? How much? Have it cropped up a little bit.
ready to go in.
Bring it back.
That's what we should go to every class when it's over.
That's not the sort of reaction you
Okay,
get
fine.
from
At the
stuff.
beginning of class, then. There you go. That's more polite. Right. That was disrespectful.
You end with that, it's like, oh man.
Yeah, that was
Alright,
just.
I need
so
to-
fine.
I need to fiddle with this a second, unfortunately.
No worries.
Sorry, Latchers. Tell me what's going on when I do this. Can they see me doing all of this?
Yeah, they can. You can all of them. You say sorry, live stream?
Sorry, what?
Live stream.
Up close and
Sorry,
personal.
live stream. Somebody just keep tracking the live stream to make sure that nothing strange is happening or something.
Okay.
Please don't tell me I deleted the advertiser.
Just crash this one down.
Here we go. Public now.
That's also
Update.
very true. So let's just have
Hold on, Kimba, sorry. Alright.
You're good.
Is he like up in the screen right now?
Alright.
How many people are watching?
Oh, you're not in it.
There's 3 people watching.
What's up, live stream?
That's more than just me.
Hold on, I'm
Like,
All our fans.
That's
Yeah.
so cool. Though.
Cool. Does that know it's okay?
Should everybody Snapchat this and be like, watch this live stream?
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Oh.
Do you share this? Do you share this from the site when it's happening?
Yeah, if they go to, it should be, if they go to blacklivesmattersilvers.com
Watch this live
and
stream.
click on the requisite thing, they should be able to be like, let's just see.
It's Inception.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So, we're good. So, I wanted to start a conversation with the clip. You want to start with the clip, right?
Sure.
And so if we can hit the lights. And I want us to think about this clip in relationship to our readings for today, as well as sort of the conversations we've been having. And then from there, we can have a dialogue about this piece, particularly in relationship to the Frederick Douglass reenactment that you watched for today. So, Brother Miles, if you could hit that clip for me and put it in widescreen.
All right. Well, 20 years. 20 years, but, who's counting, right? 20 years. She endured a said marriage where sister really ain't have no say in the original arrangements nor the terms thereof. For 20 years, he beat her senseless. Somehow or another, she managed to muster up the quote-unquote bravery to stick around because one day he decided maybe he shouldn't hit her no more. Now, granted, that was due to outside pressure that threatened the security of his pockets, but he stopped, right? The damage was done. And on their 40th wedding anniversary, they both decide, maybe we'll throw a nice little shindig. Spare no details, all expenses, pull out all the stops. Invite all their family and friends. She is to smile, celebrate her husband's greatness, talk about how far they've gone as a country, as a couple. Better reminisce on the good old days when everybody knew their places. Better talk about all the great the great triumphs that they've accomplished. All the lands and the places that they've conquered, that they stole, that they visited. And before any of their friends come in the still silence, you could hear the creak of the floor as he walks. Touches ever so gently the caresses the small of her back and says, hey, look how far we've come. Those last 20 years, they were rough, but these have been good. Let's not talk about the last ones because, they make everybody uncomfortable, and they separate. And why would you want to separate? Let's unify. Let's talk about unity. What is she to do? Well, she's to hold her little sparkler, wear her pretty little red, white, and blue dress, and act like the first 20 years didn't happen. As if she's still not suffering under the thumb of the mental walls that he done built. Oh yeah, he ain't hit her no more, but he don't have to. The stars do all that work for her. You know, she ain't been the same since. Her hip is a little bit out of the place. Her jaw is kind of ajar to the left, so her smile a little crooked. And every once in a while, he compares her to other wives, like, you know, she ain't as pretty as y'all are, but he trying to tell her, I don't see color. I don't see beauty.
Mm-hmm.
She is to be thankful that now she can be in the big house. She is to celebrate her rights, her right to vote, you know, on what's for dinner, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, things are good now, or at least they better than they were. You should pat your nation, your husband on his back, tell him he's the greatest nation, the greatest country, the greatest man in the world. What is she to do? You ask, if it was so bad, why didn't she leave? As a matter of fact, why is she always playing the victim? Why is everything about her? Don't other wives get hit too? Don't all wives matter? Why am I forced to only mourn your scars? You know, girls hit girls all the time. We call that white on white crime. Why do you worry about just yours? And if it was so bad, if it really was so bad, why was he not prosecuted? Why did not all of your friends who saw this all going on step in and say something? Maybe she's making this up. Why did your church not even step in, instead silenced you and said this is not our issues? And in a weird twist of magic, somehow she just became the victim and the villain. And I don't know how this worked. Does he not owe her? Does forgiveness not require restitution first? Does the cross that you say you cling to does not scream that justice comes before reconciliation? How can we talk about unity if you're not ready to admit you're wrong? Is she not worth justice? And what about the ladies that fight back? Can you not understand why she might think to take matters into her own hands and punch this sucker every once in a while? Even though we know that vengeance is just a bastard version of justice, can you not understand the pain for which this young lady is suffering? Is it not too late to say you're sorry, huh, Justice? Those thoughts don't plague your mind? I don't know. You know what? Never mind. Happy 4th of July. Enjoy your ribs.
Miles, can you on YouTube for us? Actually, nope. Just scroll right down to the Jones clip.
Frederick Douglass, once a slave, became a brilliant and powerful leader of the anti-slavery movement. In 1852, he was asked to speak in celebration of the 4th of July.
Fellow citizens, pardon me, and allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I, therefore, called express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems for inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? What, to the American slave, is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days of the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is a constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. Your boasted liberty, an unholy license. Your national greatness, swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence. Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes that would disgrace a nation of savages. There's not a nation of the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument, is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour forth a stream, a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and the crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced.
Thanks, Miles. Turn the lights on. We need the storm. We need the storm. Before we get into discussion and hear from Brother Kendrick, I forgot. I do want us to introduce ourselves. We have to do this every time we have a guest. Yes, it's becoming exhausting for you all, but it is a necessary exercise and we will repeat. So, we're going to go around the room. We're going to say our names, and we're going to say our concentration and our year, and we're going to start here.
Hi, I'm Eva. I'm a sophomore. I don't know what I'm concentrating in, but I am into like literature and social justice, stuff like that.
I'm Miles. I'm a photography major and also a minor in social
Y'all do me a
justice.
favor. I'm like low. I get a lot of energy and I can't sit down too long. So if y'all can stand up when you introduce yourself to me. I'm gonna be right here with you. Go ahead.
I'm Miles. I'm a photography major with a minor in social culture analysis with a focus on blackness and identity.
I like that.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm in Gallatin, and my concentration is exploring socially constructed identity through character and narrative forms, and I'm a senior.
Love it.
I'm Angie. I'm a senior studying human rights law and human expression.
What was that?
Human rights law and human expression.
What was your name?
Angie.
Angie. Nice to meet you.
I'm Nick. I'm a sophomore at Gallatin. My concentration is to be determined.
Mine too.
David. I'm a junior at Gallatin, and my concentration is media, politics, and activism.
Nice.
I'm Dennis. I'm a senior at Gallatin. My concentration is political theory and U.S. history.
Hi.
I'm Emily. I'm a junior in Gallatin. I'm concentrating in artistic
Nice.
Hi, I'm Zara. I just graduated from NYU. I was a policy major, and I've watched all episodes and I really enjoyed it.
I'm Patrick. I'm a senior at Gallatin. I'm majoring in biological and cultural diversity.
I'm Tiffin. I'm a Gallatin senior, and I concentrate in the history of African American politics.
Hi, I'm Siri. I'm a junior and I'm studying visual journalism and public policy.
Hi, I'm Haley. I'm a junior and I'm studying race, power, and agency with a focus in marketing and advertising.
I'm Isabella, and I'm a sophomore. And last time I saw you, like I wasn't even sure I'd been out of my year, but it's so cool that you're here. And still developing my concentration, but yeah.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm a junior and I study art and social change.
Sound like you study art.
Hi, I'm Malcolm, and I'm studying electrical and food engineering, and I'm in 4th year.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Adriana. I'm actually visiting from Phoenix. I'm a community organizer out there, and have been doing a lot of work around police reform and immigration issues.
Love that.
There's a lot.
Love it.
Pleasure to have our visitor.
Thank you. Yeah.
We have another one in the back.
Hi, my name is Serene. I'm currently in the military actually, and I was invited by Sancho to bring his sister.
Nice to finally meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm Natalie. I'm a sophomore, and I'm majoring in politics, activism, and racism.
What's the last one, Natalie?
Racism.
I'm Camley. I'm studying art theory and violence in the United States.
I'm Maria, and I'm a master's student at Columbia. I study Black Lives Matter and relationship with human rights systems.
Okay, I'm Janae. I'm a junior at Gallatin, and I'm studying video games through the lens of race, gender, and sexuality.
Wow. I like it.
I'm Grace. I'm a senior at Gallatin studying social justice with a focus on inequality in education in the United States.
I'm Emma. I am a Gallatin senior, and I'm studying sociology.
My name is Miles. I'm a junior. I'm studying history, race studies, and I'm doing some photography and music as well.
Hi, my name is Mariah. I'm a senior at Gallatin studying the construction of race and identity for journalism and media.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm a junior in Gallatin, and I call my concentration performance and protest.
Love it.
Yeah.
I'm Isis, and I study musical. I'm a sophomore, and I study musical theater at Tisch.
Love it. Love it. Hey. Well, I mean, I hear a lot of like mixtures of basically what I do. You know, art and activism, which historically have kind of gone hand in hand already. I mean, like this is perfect for what I wanted to speak about here. I was introduced to I talk about a lot about intersectionality, and the guy who introduced me to Propaganda's video is my pastor, and he's white. And I was going to another church, and the pastor there is Latino, and they have an associate pastor who's biracial like me, white and black, and they I finally, I had many problems with the church. I had been there for years and years, but the final straw was when, after the deaths of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, and the deaths of the police officers in Dallas, they decided to do a sermon on turning the other cheek. And I was like, so I like pulled somebody to the side, and I was like, I think you missed a good opportunity here to comfort people. I mean, this is like a time in America where everyone was on edge. Everybody was like, I got so many texts, I can't sleep, and I'm like, well, I'm up too, you know, and everybody was just like distraught and didn't know what to do and wanted to take action, but then, you know, they're like, let's go organize this thing, we're going to do it on Saturday, and then the next day something would happen, and they're like, well, I guess we got to include that in the and then on Saturday something happens, and you're like, well, we've got to do that too. As a matter of fact, the Dallas shooting happened while I was at a protest, and Fox News swooped in and made sure that they asked my reaction to it, even though I didn't know what happened. So thank God I had my training. So I just said I can't speak on that because I don't know anything about it, but I pray for those families. But imagine if I didn't, you know. But anyway, I decided to pull this guy to the side, one of the pastors, and ask him about it. And one of his responses that really sat with me, even if he didn't mean it, was, this is not a platform for that. And I was like, well, if the church isn't a platform for it, I don't know, I'm not sure if you read the Bible, but, you know, Jesus was an activist. You know, so I had to separate myself, and I listened to the sermons over the next few weeks. And that Wednesday, I went to another church that I had gone to every once in a while. And a white pastor got up there and spoke about white privilege. And he gave this analogy. His name is Judah Smith. He's a wonderful, wonderful human being. He gets up there and he tells a story about his keyboardist in Seattle who's a black man. And he starts out talking about his own son and how his son was premature. Judah's son was premature. And he was scared that him and his wife would cry, you know, thinking, you know, will our son, you know, survive? And then once he survived and he was healthy, they could move on with their lives. And they thought about this, you know, his keyboardist who this year had a new beautiful baby boy, little black kid. And he goes up to him and he says, you know, congratulations, you got this healthy baby boy, black. And he says, you know, to be honest, I'm kind of scared to raise my kid in this America today. And he said he thought to himself, that's what white privilege is. As a premature baby, as my child being premature, all I had to worry about as a white man in America is him making it out of this stage and being healthy. And then I don't have to worry about these other circumstances that this young black boy has to worry about being pulled over, you know, or whatever. Or sometimes, you know, in Stockton, I believe it's Stockton, we were out there, we found out they had the highest rate of, and I might be wrong on this statistic, it's either California or Stockton, has the highest rate of child arrests under the age of 10. Why is that a statistic? And they're people of color, kids of color. And so this is what he has to worry about. And I thought, if he could get up there and boldly talk about this on stage, and my Latino and biracial pastors at this other church are like, this is not the platform, you know, they qualified it later. I will give them that. But even the fact that it came out of his mouth, which actually the guy that it came out of his mouth was black. And I just was like, the fact that even came up, this is just not the place for me. And over the next few weeks, he brought a civil rights pastor. Right now, he's doing like a 6-week talk on Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, this is the kind of, and our contrary to the other church, which is very multicultural, this church is very multicultural, but predominantly white. And he said that's the place where it needs to be, the discussion needs to take place. I think that's amazing. He sends me this video. And I was like, it changed my perspective on so many things, and it reminded me, this year I did, and Howard Zinn put this together, talks of several different prominent voices over the years couple centuries. Um,
Howard Zinn, People's History of the United States.
People's
You also
History of the
own a
United
copy, several copies.
Yeah, his brother put together um, an event called the People Sing and Speak, I think, in Chicago this year, and I read Philip Agnew piece and a Martin Luther King piece, and the guy that went before me read what James Earl Jones just read, and he was passionate, fiery, and I was like, I didn't even know this existed. Frederick Douglass, this Frederick Douglass piece existed, and I was like, why did they put me after him? Because that's such an amazing speech. And that's what the barbecue piece, the 20 years piece reminded me of, except it was put in the context of an analogy, comparing an abusive relationship between a woman and a man to the abusive relationship between people of color and the United States. And both of these make me consider things like that are so simple. I mean, what I can say is we've progressed as a nation in a sense, because we can talk about white privilege and not say that that's a conspiracy. I mean, the people right now who say that's a conspiracy theory are in the minority now. Whereas even just a year ago, if I would have said, white privilege, people would have been like, oh, angry black man, like, take him to the side. I think he's about to explode. Conspiracy theorist, in the same way that a few months ago you couldn't talk about free college, you couldn't talk about, all these things that Bernie was saying are now they were radical, crazy ideas, but now they're part of the Democratic National Platform. So we have progressed, and it doesn't take much. It takes a radical person. It takes fire, and what Frederick Douglass was talking about, somebody radical to come and say, hey, you know what, I believe, I imagine a different world. I imagine a world that is anti-status quo, right? that is progressive, that makes sure that everyone is okay. When one of us are not okay, all of us are not okay, and we're not going to stop until every one of us is okay. I love that world. Why can't we live in that world? No, that world is not practical, and you get all these voices that push this down. But I love people like this, that say absolutely not. People like Judah who say, you know what, I am in a predominantly white church, and I don't think this is what they want to hear, but I'm going to take a chance. And I'm going to make sure that I'm a part of this movement. That's what intersectionality is, saying that I'm not, that's the beauty of intersectionality. That's what I'll say about that. It's the beauty of it is, Shailene Woodley, I was campaigning with Shailene, and she would always talk about, and this guy Mike De La Rocha and Rosario, and talk about standing in a circle, and what that represented. The best thing about standing in a circle is that, I can see behind your back, right? And you can see behind mine. I don't know what's coming, but I'm looking out for you. And if something's coming for you, I'm going to tell you. Now that involves a lot of trust. It might be funny if something comes for you. I'm scared. No, but that's what's so great about a circle is I can look at you and I say, I have your back. I hope you have mine. I have your back. You have my back. And I'm looking at all these people, and we can stand around and do this. And that's what, I might not have. What might hurt you may not hurt me. So I don't necessarily, it doesn't benefit me to look out for you, but I will, because I see it coming, and that's my responsibility. I believe we all have a responsibility on this earth to be our brothers and sisters' keeper. I believe we have a responsibility and a duty on this earth to make sure everyone is okay. That if we see the trouble coming, we have to say something. Otherwise we're culpable. We have a little guilt in whatever that was that happened, whatever negative thing happened, if we saw it coming. And that's what I believe intersectionality is. I may not have any interest in, let me see, give me your name one more time. Yes, Dennis? Yeah. Dennis. Okay, so I'm not Asian, right? So, I can look into your community and say, there's this problem, and it does not affect me. It only affects Asians specifically. Now, what kind of human, in my opinion, what kind of human would I be if I didn't see that and speak out about it? What would I do? What kind of human would I be if I didn't see a specific group of people being oppressed or being hurt and not speak up about that? In the same way that if I'm asking other people at the Black Lives Matter movement to come in, other races to enter into this movement with me, or the Bernie Sanders movement. You know, it doesn't necessarily, I'm asking wealthy people to enter into this movement with me because it doesn't necessarily benefit you. I need to be willing, in the same way that I'm asking people to come into my movement that directly affects people that I love and people that look like me and myself, I need to be willing to go outside of my own community and stand up for other people, which is why I have this hat on today, you know, and I wear this a lot. This is a buddy of mine, Joey Montaigne, started this line called Urban Native Era, and he did that to bring awareness to problems in indigenous communities. Right now they're doing a lot of work protesting and protecting our land, protesting and our water, protesting the Dakota Access Pipeline. I met with Shailene and Rosario and Mike. We went to a church, the Guadalupe Church, where Cesar Chavez started, you know, the UFW, yeah. So, which was kind of like magical. Like, we're in this space and we're talking about a political revolution, and it was 50 Native students that were at Stanford and San Jose State. The majority of them were at Stanford, and I met that guy there, and he gave me a piece of his art, and I loved it because it reminded me, you know, I wanted to wear something every day because it reminded me what intersectionality is, what looking out for each other is, what, you know, he had interest in the Black Lives Matter movement, and I had interest in what he was doing and the problems within the community that I didn't know about, you know, and that's what these things do, is remind me every day when you know, my Muslim brothers and sisters that are facing, you know, persecution and racism, and not saying that that's a race, but they are facing racism, like especially stereotypical Islamic. But anyway, right now we know what the state of the country is with a candidate that I really don't want to call a candidate. But I think it is our duty to stand up for those people. It's not just the Black Lives Matter movement. I think the Black Lives Matter movement encompasses all of that. In the same way that we, you know, stand up for immigration reform. Our biggest outreach for the Bernie campaign was the Latino community, and they were our boldest volunteers. Like, there was a group of undocumented students that went around and canvassed, and they were like, you know what, I can't vote, but I see that this is amazing, and I'm gonna go and knock on doors and get people involved in the community. And they were, get involved in the political revolution and talk about free healthcare and free college and civil rights and Black Lives Matter movement. When I saw undocumented students talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, I was like, I'm done. If they get it, you know what I mean? You live here. You know, you can't, there's no way you can see what's going on and not feel something. When people lash out and say, you know, all lives matter, or in this case, all wives matter, I think they're doing the same thing. They're thinking, what about my pain? And part of that pain is, I think, it's guilt. They think that they might have something to do with it, and they don't want to look inside themselves and see that everyone is racist. I honestly believe you cannot grow up in the United States and be racist to somebody. I have absolutely no idea what's going on in Bali right now. And I will, if I had a conversation with somebody from that country, I would probably say some pretty offensive things just because I don't know what's going on. And I would say something, you know, stereotypical about their culture, or wrong or incorrect, and it might offend them. And then I would get corrected, and then I would move forward and not ever do that again. And I would spread the word. Hey, don't say that about people from Bali. You know, that's how this works. Because of the way our education system is set up in America, we cannot, I don't think you can grow, I have racist tendencies, you know, everybody does, I believe, honestly. And that's one reason that I think we need intersectionality. We need to reach outside and learn about each other's cultures and the problems, specifically the problems, you can't really know someone without knowing their pain and being able to have empathy. So anyway, I believe I went a little bit off.
No. We're jazz men and women here. We improvise. This is what we like to do. We riff so much there. I mean, in many ways, what Brother Kendrick is talking about, first of all, is building a politics based on an ethics, what I would call an ethics of mutual care, right? Which means if your politics are only about, I can only advocate for you to the extent that something is in it for me, then that's going to end real soon the minute you meet someone who does not look like the you that you are. But when we build our politics around an ethics of mutual care, it means that we have decided that as human beings, we are all endowed with certain rights, right? To kind of invoke the language of the Declaration. Also, it's important probably to distinguish between racism and prejudice, right? Because those two things are not exactly the same thing. How is racism, what is the distinction between racism and prejudice? So, Natalie.
Like racism is backed up by like structures and policies, whereas prejudice means like kind of like everyone can be prejudiced, but then if you're like of a certain group, you can be racist because you can act on your prejudice and it affects people in a certain way.
Okay, so let me ask that differently. Who in the class, because let's not act like this is saying the difference between racism and prejudice is as common sense as the difference between Coke and Sprite, like as if everyone knows it, right? So there've got to be some people in the room who actually don't know the distinction between racism and prejudice. Are there any brave souls who are willing to say that they're not actually clear about that distinction? So everybody's clear. Okay. So for all these folks, so all the clarity folk, besides Janae and Natalie, who else wants to tell me this distinction? Haley.
So I would say, like, I can't be racist as a black woman, but I can have acts of prejudice, if that makes sense. Like,
Okay.
I would say
And why can't you be racist as a black woman?
Because
according to this definition.
According to like hypo-descent, kind of as the lowest group on the quote-unquote like race totem pole, me saying like, oh, I don't like the way this group does this, isn't necessarily going to affect anything that happens to that group.
Okay. So yes, Hannah.
Yeah. And that I think that the distinction of like prejudice and racism, like prejudice is a part of racism.
Yeah.
It's just that like as a white person, my prejudice can like make a impact on like if someone who is not white like insults me or whatever, like that's generally not going to affect like my job prospects, and like I'm not going to be pulled over by the cops probably or stopped by TSA or any of that. Whereas like the prejudices that I have as a white person are going to like meaningfully like impact and harm people on the hypo-descent spectrum.
Yeah. Nicholas.
I was gonna say that, like, going off what you said earlier, was that like everybody has implicit bias or prejudice or racism in a form, but like only white people in this country, at least in most of the world, have the power to make it turn into an institutional thing where the power's behind them. So effectively, only white people can be racist in the like systemic terms.
Yeah. So it's a controversial concept. Not everyone agrees. But to understand what the distinction is allegedly, right? Like prejudice is about exactly what the root of that word being prejudgment. Prejudice is about I have a preconceived notion of who you are and who your people are. Racism is a little different because racism is about using that prejudice in conjunction with one's power to actually affect a tangible sort of thing or utterance in the world, right? So Jerome on the block in Flatbush can be as prejudiced as he wants towards white people. Because Jerome on the block don't got a job, Jerome on the block don't have any power except the power that actually happens when he goes into his home, which is why intersectionality, think about the conversation we had last week about black women, racism against black men often being in the public sphere, but then black men often going home to control the private sphere, which black women reside in, and so he can actually take out those power issues in the private sphere over his woman if he's in a relationship with his woman. That's a tangential side note. The point here being, Jerome's prejudice in Flatbush is probably not actually going to materialize in any kind of substantive way. Whereas Donald Trump's prejudice, right, can reflect in you can't get a spot in Trump Towers, you can't be employed here, that racism is about power. And so when people say that, for instance, black people can't be racist, that which sounds like, in the white liberal imagination, how dare you, that's a form of reverse racism. Well, actually, what that's about is about saying that people who don't have access to power actually cannot be racist because racism is about power.
Saying that like the same person committing one act can be deemed racist or not racist based on the context. Like for example, if I
Yes.
said something about white people, or no, wait, okay. If I said something that that would be offensive to like another person in this setting where I have like like pretty much a lot of power because I'm like a student or whatever and I have like all this unlimited access, but
Double check on the
compared to
computer
like
to see if we're still live.
for example, if I were in like another country. No, sorry. Okay, this is what I'm saying. Okay, if I said something in this country where I'm considered a minority, but then and it was like offensive about white people, but that doesn't mean anything. You just say that's not racist because white people have more power than I do in this national context. If I said something like in China where white people are actually a minority and sometimes they actually do have difficulty getting jobs because of like language restrictions, is that considered racist then?
Yes.
Based on this
Because racism, like race, is positional. Racism, like race, is positional. Being black in the United States does not mean the same thing in Brazil. Likewise, being racist is positional. It doesn't mean the same thing in the United States as it does in China.
And I also think with what he said earlier about the difference between racist saying, racist doing, if you say something that's racist, it's racist.
Right.
No matter where you are. If you are saying something, if you're using your words to belittle or hurt or put down a specific group of people and raise your own race above theirs, which is technically what racism would be, saying that your race is more powerful or whatever than this, or belittling them, then that's racist anywhere you go.
Yeah.
But doings would be the opposite, or the difference, where if you do something here to say that you're gonna hire an Asian person over a white person because there is a lack of jobs for Asian people in this country. Here, that would not be racist, right? But in Asia, if white people are struggling and oppressed and have a history of slavery in, whatever country, say you're in Tibet, doesn't happen, but just saying, and there's a history of enslaved white people there, and they are having a hard time getting jobs there, and Tibetan people are refusing them jobs because they think of them as less than, then yes, that is racist.
One last one that we gotta move on, folks. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know this was such a hot. Next week we gonna do it. We still gotta know what we're gonna do next week. Miles.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, I'm just a little troubled by distinguishing or making distinctions between racist actions versus racist talking or whatever.
Yeah.
Partially
Because the racist talking is an action, right?
Well,
so talking is an
that
action.
for one, yeah, but also, I think racism can be on a subconscious level, and I think it's important to note that, partially just because, like, I could use an example, like, I've met people at NYU that after having conversations with them would be like, yeah, you're fucking racist, but, like, if I were to ever call them out on it, they would be pretty upset and reject it, and, like, they're not going to be acting on racism, they're not saying anything racist, but they have, like, a mindset or mentality or previous,
Sure. Well, and it's also conditional, right? If you live in a polluted apartment, your lungs are polluted, right? So we live in a polluted nation, right? Racism is a part of the DNA of this country, and we all breathe and are a part of that DNA, right? So we're all racist. But saying we're all racist does not flatten us all out so that it means, oh, well, fuck it, we're all racist, But it does sort of say, okay, we understand that we all have racist feelings that we're dealing with. But again, part of the problem with the crisis of race in the United States is that it is a crisis of language too. There is and we talked about this on the first day of class. class about race, couldn't no one really define race, that there's a lack of conceptual clarity about the crisis. So part of the crisis has to do with our lack of conceptual clarity with how to diagnose it, right? And so we use sloppy terms like colorblind and post-racial. We conflate prejudice with racism. We don't really even understand how to distinguish blackness from African American, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the things we try to do in here is build conceptual clarity. And so in the service of that goal, I would argue that you do need to be able to be clear about the distinction between prejudiceness and racistness. Understanding that sometimes they're the same thing, sometimes they're overlapping, but they can in fact be mutually exclusive. Can in fact be prejudiced but not racist.
Yeah, from what I understand, well, 2 points. In the context of your question, like, you know, they had the New York 10. Y'all familiar with the New York 10? I believe that's what they call it. No. Yeah, that's another subject. No, the New York 10 were 10 officers that came forward, who were minorities. I believe they're called the New York 10. Might have the number off. But anyway, they are New York police officers who were whistleblowers to the system of the quota system in the New York Police Department. And one of the things they said, they showed their faces were not blacked out. They decided to have an interview on, I believe, an NBC affiliate here, and the video went viral. And one of the things that they said was it's hard to go into the New York Police Academy, or whatever it's called, and not be racist, even as a minority, because it's systemic. So you go in and they tell you to police this area even if you're not assigned to it, to fill your quota, to go in and stop and frisk and do these things to people that cannot afford to defend themselves, cannot afford to hire lawyers. And if you did that in a wealthier area, there would be a lot of backlash, right? And the news would show up and there would be a huge lawsuit and it would be all over the front pages that they, you know, hemmed up this white kid and, you know, on
Can you
whatever.
imagine if there were police officers in the hallway, right? I mean, it seems literally unimaginable that here at NYU that we could have police officers on every hall. But the fact of the matter is there are many communities here in the U.S., right here in New York, where that is a reality. You live in high school, you live in a New York City housing project, you can have a police officer on every single one of your floors. And so, and that seems, you know, again,